You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from Cboe. The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back once again. It is Thursday. It is noon Central. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's popping off in these wild markets? Well, let's find out together, shall we? Time for the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo, coming at you from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the network. Reminding you at the top of the show, if you're not subscribed to the full network, you are missing out on a whole bunch of goodies. And, of course, speaking of goodies, there are many goodies lurking behind the velvet rope over there at theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Make sure you check it out when you get a chance. I think you're going to like what you're going to find. About a week left to get your name in the hat for the October Pro Trading Crate. Trust me, you want to win one of those. Just look at the Rock Lobster. He's still angry that he is not eligible. Rub it in his face. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go as we go around the horn and see who's joining us on the Thursday show. First, out to the hinterlands of St. Charles we go, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the Thursday show, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here when the market's almost at an all-time high again.
Uh-oh. You better drink some tea and lubricate the vocal cords just in case you have to shout from the rafters, your catchphrase, as we beam back to the hallowed halls of Cboe East, where we are joined once again by the Flowmaster, Mr. Henry Schwartz from Cboe. Mr. Flowmaster, welcome back to the show. I'm not used to not having you beam in from right down the street munching on some delicious spicy pickles, sir. How are things in Cboe East?
Everything is good in New York. It feels like fall. It's been windy and the leaves are falling off the trees. And then, the market kind of feels like fall too. It's gotten a little bit more choppy. I detect a little bit more fear out there. Although, as Mike said, we've bounced back up and we're very near all-time highs, if not there. And so it's been pretty interesting. I mean, VIX is back down to 17.5 or so. I think last week we were talking, we were in the 25 zone. So, we continue that there's a lot happening, a lot popping off right in the kind of middle of earnings as well. So it's exciting times here at Cboe in New York and also in Chicago.
Dare I say it, we're in a little bit of a Rocktober, which is the perfect segue to the event I'm going to tonight, Rocktoberfest, the charity event for a leg to stand on. altso.org if you're in the Chi-Town area. Get your tickets before tonight. I will be there. Will be a fun time. Rocktoberfest, check it out. As we check out what's going on, it is time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And as Uncle Mike alluded to, we are once again flirting with some new all-time highs north of 6,700. In the S&P, up about 0.5%. NASDAQ up about 0.75%. Dow up about 0.2%. And our old pal VIX Cash continuing to come back to earth, right around 17.75 as we kicked off the show. It puts it down 1 point from Monday. And a week ago, as Henry alluded to, we were threatening a 25 at this point. So a very different vol regime 1 week later. But we all know that could change on a dime. That could change on a tweet. VVIX back down to a 102, down 5 points from where it was on the Monday show. Let's go out to the hinterlands now. Mr. Uncle Mike, we will start with you. I'm looking in our chat. They're talking about, it's fantasy football kickoff night yet again for the week. Had a bit of a challenging week this past week. The buys and the injuries kind of stacked up against me. My first place team ended up finally taking an L. But, I think I'm still in first place as we keep on. Well, my other league, I crushed it, so that was a good one there. But in the Options Insider League, the one we're all watching, that had a bit of a tough week. I'm up against Brian Overby, that notorious scumbag out there. So good luck to everybody this week, except for him. Oh, I see the Queen is playing Uncle Mike this week, so there we go. The Queen might take it to you. She was undefeated for a while, Uncle Mike. So what is your status in the fantasy football land? How are you faring? And then B, what's catching your eye as you prepare for potentially yet a new all-time high, sir?
It's craziness. I mean, in the fantasy football world, it's like I need to stick to real football. I'm much better at that sport than I am in the fantasy football league. I think next year what we need to do is get something set up to where we have Chicago suburban fantasy football, and I think I'd have a lot more success with that. That's for sure. And
what's catching your eye out there in the mobile office this week, sir?
Well, so a few things that are happening right now. Number one, we are close to the all-time highs, but I'm thinking of Warren Buffett. And he's always said, whenever everyone is fearful, be greedy. When everyone is greedy, be fearful. But right now, we're all kind of greedy and fearful at the same time. Yes, we're at close to all times. And yes, there's a lot of money in the market. But it seems like this is one of those hated rallies. We're fearful because we're at all-time highs, but yet we're still greedy and we're still buying it. So I don't know how to gauge whether we're all greedy or fearful right now. So that's one thing that's kind of weighing on my mind. The other thing, with my fellow investment policy committee people at RCM, we were meeting today, and so we're very much all bulls for the long term, like me, of course. But the things that we're talking about right now is how can we take something off the table and still have upside exposure. So, for example, in our triple income with our cover calls, there's a lot more in the money cover calls this month as a way of being cautious. With our long-term hedge strategic night, that we hedge for the long term with our stock holdings, we actually have rolled up our long-term put options. So we've locked in gains for the year. Of course, there is always the risk as the stocks go down and the market doesn't. That is always the risk, but that's never really been a problem in years past. So we're trying to get more cautious in the options, but today are not portfolios. We're having meetings in terms of how much leeway do we have of going to cash, going to various bonds and things within our stock portfolios. So we're very much preparing for the storm, but we also don't want to stand in the way of the good markets with which we've been having. So it's kind of a confusing time from those areas, but with these markets, let's be honest, this is excitement every day in this market space. So that's a good thing. The other things of which we're watching, silver had quite the pullback this week. So it's still well above, it's still very high right now, but it did have silver and gold have been kind of easing off a little bit. So be mindful of that and combine the fact with we're in such a unique time to where we're at market all-time highs, but still the metals are very high. So lots of things happening. We have earnings. I believe we are going to have a CPI tomorrow or this week. I think they have like a skeleton crew that's going to do it. We have the Fed coming up next week, I believe. So a lot of things happening, and I'll just leave it at that. What a time to be alive.
Wow. Even Uncle Mike, our resident permabull, exploring going to cash or fixed income, or at the very least getting ready for it. Now, that should tell you something out there, listeners. Even the man who never met a rally he didn't want to buy. The Boy Scouts tell you always be prepared, and sensible thing to be prepared for perhaps a little bit of at least chop going forward out there, listeners. Wild stuff out there. As we head on out now to the hallowed halls of Cboe East, a lot of wild paper going up in the options market these days. Mr. Flowmaster, what has been catching your eye since the last time we chatted, sir?
It's. I mean, we hit some turbulence, and I agree with what Mike's saying in terms of, it's been a hated rally for a little while, right? I mean, there's been the press has been kind of predominantly, we're overextended. The concentration of the Mag 10 stocks. I'm going to always say Mag 10 now instead of Mag 7 because Cboe is launching a Mag 10 index option group next month. But it has been kind of a nerve-wracking rally, right? We're $4 trillion valuation for Nvidia, I think, and these numbers are very big, and there is a lot of press about maybe this bull market is kind of due for a pullback. We get kind of some, I wouldn't even call it much of a certainly not a correction. We get a move of maybe 1% or 2%, and in the end, it kind of turns out to be a dip buying opportunity yet again. So really nothing much has changed. But at the same time, we really are only one tweet away, right? I mean, that it was the 100% tariffs that hit us a couple Fridays ago. You never know what's kind of around the corner, but at the same time, you cannot afford to not be invested, and I absolutely agree. I think I was saying last week, I like the strategists that are kind of saying, maybe long calls is kind of a better way to play this at the moment. You'll still have that upside. Yes, you have some decay to kind of worry about, but also your downside is much, much more limited than just staying really long in a rally that, year to date, we're up, what are we looking about, 14.5% for the S&P. That's a good year. We still have a couple more months. So, I think just kind of trimming delta where you can, makes some sense, but you can't afford. I would not be going into cash just because I do think that as much as there's a lot of kind of headwinds out there, there's also some pretty solid tailwinds, and I think that the administration has a pretty strong interest in keeping things buoyant. So, but in terms of catching my eye, the index volume has been very strong. The 0DTE volume, man, I was looking yesterday. And in the NDX index, it was 82% 0DTE, which is even higher than average. So that really is kind of mind blowing. I put out my State of the Industry third quarter deck, and I think I tagged you on X, Mark. So that's available for download, and we dive into really, this 0DTE phenomenon and how much activity there is there, and what the what the customers are doing. So it's just, I would say at this level, VIX back down to 17, optionality is pretty cheap again. So it's, it's a good market to kind of pick your spots, and obviously we still have earnings happening, some pretty decent sized moves. Tesla got a little bit whacked last night, so there's plenty to keep people busy.
82%. 82% 0DT. That's just a absolutely wild number, sir. I don't know what to do, how to process that. It wasn't that long ago we were surprised to see 50%, and now 82%. So pretty soon, why would we even list anything beyond a day? What's the point? That's where all the action is. Mr. Flowmaster. Speaking of action, let's see what kind of action is lighting up our tape out there right now in the options market. If you like this segment, you want to hear a whole show just like this, but just the facts, ma'am, clips, and all that kind of fun, check out the Hot Options Report. Yet another reason why you should be subscribed to the full network, listeners. And VIX right now looking decent, 398,000 contracts on the tape, so almost halfway to its new ADV of 858,000 contracts, which is up about 100,000. It was hovering right around 750,000 not too long ago. So decent paper, all things considered, for VIX land. And VIX was looking wild this time a week ago, so we'll see if we can put up some more wild numbers out there today. What is the hot option in VIX land, you might be wondering? It's 41,000 of the D16 puts. Average price for these about 45 cents. Kind of an interesting strike. There's a couple of times of year where you could definitely pique my curiosity talking about VIX puts. December is certainly one. August is traditionally another one. 2 seasonally weak times for vol. This year, there's some other stuff going on with the Fed and everything else in December that might keep vol a little bit perkier through that time frame. But interesting stuff here. D16 puts 45 cents. You get a decent amount of duration for that. And at the end of the day, when you're buying options, duration is your friend. So we thought we'd put it out to you folks. Do you like that? Are you a buyer, or are you sold to you for 45 cents? Just went live a few minutes ago. And you know what? This is what makes a market. Our audience cannot make up their minds. 50-50 exactly. Buyer or sold to you, it is split 50-50 out there right now, listeners. So we'll keep an eye on that, listeners. It's, again, not the worst flyer, and it's certainly better than all these 15 puts we've been talking about going to die forever. In every month in VIX land, in August, in September, in October, tons of money going to die on the 15 strike. 16, maybe that's your huckleberry. We shall see, listeners. Let's do a quick top 5 in VIX land while we're there. Number 2, 29,000 of the Nove 25s. Number 3, 25,000 of the Nove 17 puts. Number 4, 22K of the Nove 50s, all over the place in November. And then number 5, 15,000 of the Nove 19 puts. Out to SPY. Is SPY looking robust right now? The answer is yes. SPY and the S have been liking this little bit of, I suppose you can call it, whipsaw action, though today is not really whipsaw. It's more of just a straight up action. But lately we have seen a little bit of back and forth, and that has driven some flow. SPY looking pretty hot right now, closing in on nearly 6 million contracts already. That's pretty hot. The ADV is only 9.5 million, so they'll definitely get there. It's a question of how much beyond that. Of course, that said, we've seen a lot of numbers coming in hot to this time of the show and then kind of cooling off in the second half of the session. So by all means, make sure you're checking out the Hot Options Report later today to see if SPY stays hot throughout the rest of the day. Because the Flowmaster invoked all things 0 day, let's just do a quick check in SPY. Right now, I'm seeing 4 of the top 20 most active contracts are not expiring today. So I would thought it would be all 20 for 20 if 0 day was running the table, and we are not quite there. As we keep on going out to the S, it is a hot day in the SPX. The answer is yes, 2.35 million contracts already going up in the S against an ADV of nearly 4.5 million. So on its way to that ADV out there today. Let's run the table here in SPX as well. Let's see. Are we looking all 0 day all the time? The answer is yes. Ain't no one got time for a contract that doesn't expire today in the SPX. How's that for your double negatives, listeners? Yeah, just all 0 a day, all the time in the S. If you're wondering, 67 halves are your Huckleberry today. 105,000 of those bad boys have changed hands so far today. Average price of $1.65. We're going to need to get some legs in the second half of the session if those bad boys are going to come to fruition, but we shall see. Small caps looking hot right now as well, 1.01 million. So small caps have been on fire of late, outpacing the major indices in both directions. And today that is to the upside, up over 1% in the small caps right now. Again, putting up a little over 1 million contracts out there. The ADV, 1.65 million. Certainly seems like it's on pace to hit that. Interesting thing about small caps is lately they've been bucking the trend. A lot of Nove downside has been leading the tape. That's not the case today. Today, the hot option is the 246 call. So pretty much at the money calls. 90,000 of those bad boys have changed hands for about 33 cents. So IWM needs to keep running throughout the rest of the session to make those bad boys pay off. As we go out to the Qs, nearly 3 million contracts on the tape in the Qs. In fact, we just hit it, 3.09 million contracts on the tape right now in Qs land. ADV 4.8 million. Let's run them all. Why not? Let's just see. Qs right now, it's the 610 calls. Let's look. Let's see. Is it 20 for 20? No, there are 3 contracts not expiring today in the Qs today. Listen, everything else is all 0 day, all the time. Wild stuff. Is it wild stuff out there in the single names? Lately, the answer has been no, listeners. Lately, the answer has been kind of light. Everyone's more focused on the macro fun and all the good goodies that are going on out there, and no one really seems to have time for the micro. But we shall see, listeners. We shall see if that continues. Today, right now, it cost you 386,000 contracts to break into the top 10 out there today. So that is indeed respectable. That gets us to our old pal Palantir. So Palantir looking to put up some numbers today. Trading right now, 181 and a quarter, up 5 3/4 or 3.2%. So a nice little day for Palantir. Number 9, our old pal SMCI, 391,000 contracts on the tape. Super microcomputer falling out of bed a little bit, $48, off about 4.5 or about 8.5%. So looks like they are coming for SMCI. They cut their revenue forecast on delivery delays, so never a good thing for the stock, and that's being reflected to the downside today. Number 8, the fruit company, back north at 260 and a quarter right now, up about 1 3/4, putting up 393,000 contracts for the number 8 spot. And the fruit company has been wild ever since that big pop with the iPhone numbers earlier this week. Just wild stuff. Doesn't seem like it was that long ago. We were down at 170, 175. And Apple announced the big buyback. We all thought that was kind of crazy. Maybe a little bit of a stock support, which it clearly was. And at least in hindsight right now, it's looking pretty good. Number 8, the fruit company. Number 7, it's our old pal Intel. Intel, they've been up, they've been down. Today, they're back up $0.50, trading $37.45, putting up 413,000 contracts for the number 7 spot. As we keep on rolling in chip land to number 6, AMD, 414,000 contracts, 233.08, up 286 or about 1.25%. So AMD back in the green, keeping the A tech love alive. Number 5, the Amazonians. Earlier this week, they took out half the internet, and yet they still rallied on that day. So I don't know what can derail this stock at this point. 220 and a quarter, up about 2 1/4. Actually, just ticked again, 219.79, up about 1.85%. So still up, maybe up a little bit less. Amazon, number 5 right now, 419,000 contracts. So it's a tight race between 5 and 7. Number 4, it's our old pal Rigetti going back to quantum computing. 400, man, we're all the way up at number 4, and we're only at 437,000 contracts. Kind of shows you what a light day it is. 37.88, up about $1.88 or about a little over 5% for Rigetti. So another hot day out there in quantum. As we keep on going to number 3, I'm sure the Flowmaster is going to have some thoughts on our number 3 candidate. It's been just absolutely wild, the run this one has been on. It's Beyond Meat. We were just talking about it a few weeks ago with some deeply cynical puts. It looked like somebody thought this one was not going to survive the month. And then lo and behold, Beyond Meat rallies to $2 and then $3. And then yesterday, I think it got up to $7, somewhere in that range, $7.39. And then right back down to earth today, $3 off about half a buck. So Beyond, just a tale of wild flow. 1.15 million, actually tie. We don't see this too often, a tie between 3 and number 2, NVIDIA. 1.15 million as well, 182 and a quarter, up nearly $2 today, a little over 1%. And then you know what the big dog is today? It's post earnings for them. It's Tesla. And you know what? They kind of got a little bit shellacked. And then since then, looks like the bulls they missed expectations. They kind of got shellacked in the overnight. They opened at 420 exactly. And then since then have been on quite a run. They're 447 and a third is where they are right now. So apparently the market deciding, no, we actually like the stock again. We've been talking about 440s and 4.5s on the hot options report all week. It's like those 4.5s might come into play, 449.40. So even if you had those from earlier this week, and those prices were kind of absurd. We were talking about the over $10, I think, for some of those, but you may have had a chance to at least scratch some of those right now, see how the vol crush hits you. But we'll see later on tonight what the hot option is out there in Tesla today. But Tesla putting up some numbers, nearly 3 million contracts, 2.96 million contracts for Tesla. Again, a hot time for earnings. If you like sinking your teeth into specific names, this is the time for you. Today we had American Airlines, Dow, Hasbro, Nokia, Southwest Airlines, Intel, Alaska, and then everyone's favorite dumpster fire of a company, Ford. If you want to see a few of these right now, let's pull up the updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports. Let's go out to today. Actually, yesterday after the bell was Alcoa. They were pricing in 6.5%. They were trading 35.65 going into their announcement. And they ended up moving 13.1%. So a good time to be enrolled. Aluminum, apparently. Southwest yesterday after the bell as well. They were at 33.76 going into their announcement. They were pricing in 7.1%. They delivered 4.9% to the downside. Apparently, the street not liking what they had to say. American Airlines popping off today before the bell. They were at $12 pretty much exactly. They were pricing in 6%. They delivered 3.6%, so a little bit of underperformance there. Then everyone's favorite, Tesla, they were pricing in 6.7%. When we ran this report this morning, they had only moved 3.1%, but obviously they've rallied over 20 handles since this report. So if you held on to your juice, you're looking all right out there right now. Just absolutely wild stuff out there in Tesla for the past few weeks. If you want to sink your teeth into those reports or anything else, theoptionsinsider.com. Let's do 2 more after the bell today. Ford after the bell. They were at 12.43, which seems absolutely way too high for Ford. They were pricing in 73 cents. In the past, they've moved 71 cents. So sounds like Ford to me. And then Intel, $37 about is where they were going into their this report, I should say. They're pricing in 338. In the past, they've moved 339. So both of these a penny away. So not a ton of excitement there. In terms of excitement, though, this season is certainly looking exciting. And I have to scroll for days, listeners. There are literally hundreds of tickers we have here. If you want to go out to see Coinbase, if you want to see MSTR, you want to see Apple popping off next week. They were at $258.45 when we ran this report. They were pricing in $9.87. In the past, they moved $7.64. So pricing in extra juice in Apple. What about Amazon? They're next week as well. 218 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 13.28. In the past, they've moved 13.05. You can do all this analysis for yourselves because we like you completely for free. Head on over to the website, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab. It's all waiting there for you. Right now, the season off to a robust start. Week 1, 102%, so kind of light. And then week 2, making up for lost time, 116%. Again, it's just getting started, so these numbers will be updated and amended. Right now, the season is averaging 109%. Our long-term average has come down a little bit, come back to earth. Remember, it's only the trailing 12 quarters. So when we drop a quarter, that number could change. And that's what happened. It went from 119% to 107%. But we'll keep an eye on that. Still, outperformance is the name of the game, listeners. But now it's time to unleash the Flowmaster. See what caught his eye. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get down to business. Before we start breaking down the flow from this week that Mr. Flowmaster spotted, I have to get his thoughts on just the wild business that has been everyone's favorite BYND. I want to pull up really quickly, see if I could find just what we were talking about. What was it? It was just a week ago, I believe. Let's go see if I could find those crazy puts in BYND, but it seemed like someone was liking the calls a week ago for 16 cents. Those are certainly looking good right now, but we had another print not that long ago that talking about some downside. I'll see if I can find that. But Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what's been catching your eye in some mad times, I should say, in BYND?
Yeah, it's well, this is one that it passes my brother texting me test, so you know that it's definitely a super meme. And
he's like, should I buy BYND for $7?
He was in it. He pays a lot of attention to the chat rooms and Reddit, and he is kind of your classic Robin Hood trader that likes to play in the memes. He did okay. It was long that he dumped it, but I'll tell you, it's a wild one. It's very reminiscent of Open Door. It just in the way it moved in terms of price. This stock, it's funny going back to 10 days ago, which is a lifetime ago for BYND, the stock was $1, and there's a little bit of interesting option flow back then. In fact, 9,300 of the one strike calls were bought for 16 cents on that date, and kind of the volume continued to pick up, although the stock still kind of trudged around kind of in the 50 cents to $1 range. But man, oh man, it was. I actually saw a posting about this on Reddit. So this was definitely one on the kind of meme traders' radar. This stock went from 50 cents to, I saw it trade above $7.50 yesterday. There were multiple halts because of volatility. The implied vol of BYND I see around 800%, at least at some point. And then the stock ended up kind of finishing around $3, and it actually kind of looks like maybe the air has come out. It's at $3 today. But I mean, we saw volume of a couple million contracts. Let's see, on Monday, 1.5 million. That's when the stock went from 50 cents to $1.50, and it did not slow down. 2.5 million contracts on Tuesday, 3.25 million yesterday. Today it looks like we're going to be kind of back to the 1.7 million. It's a nutty one. The meme. I don't know. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but you do kind of have an issue where if you get enough people interested in it and kind of speculating aggressively, you get some of these moves. So, it just kind of goes down, and it goes. I guess it now joins, GameStop and AMC and Open Door, and the other kind of wild meme names as one of the stories of the year.
Yeah, absolutely wild stuff out here, listeners. Have you been caught up in the BYND frenzy? Did you scoop some of those one calls for 16 cents? If so, and you managed to hold on to them for a little bit, you were looking pretty darn good with the stock around $7 yesterday. So ballyhoo to you. As we move on to a sector and a name that has been very interesting, super hot, and then getting a little bit cold, it seems like, over the last few sessions. We're talking, of course, about all things uranium and the nuclear segments. They've been hot, of course, AI driving a lot of demand for that. Hot names like SMR and others have been rallying hard. Denison now coming back to earth a little bit. And we're seeing that also right now in another one we talked about a few times. This is everyone's favorite Quad U, aka Energy Fuels Inc., aka UUUU, trading $21.50 off about $1.20, a little over 5% today. So again, coming back to earth a little bit, still up 2.25%, 11.5% just over the past week. And certainly year to date, it's been a good year, up 278%. I'll say I remember talking about this one when it was in the single digits not too long ago on shows like Oddities and others. So quite the run it has been for Energy Fuels Inc. So clearly it has some upside to give back if it likes. But let's see, Mr. Flowmaster, what did you spot out there in everyone's favorite Quad user?
Yeah, so this one hit my radar because it took up the full top 4 lines of the my trade of the day email, which we talk about every once in a while. To see one stock, basically call buying in one stock with some real impressive returns, and we're talking like $600,000 on a block of 29 calls that were bought yesterday. About 7,000 of them were bought for $1.10. These things closed at $3 because the stock ran up. Now, I don't know if this is one where, there's some speculation that the government might take a stake or what. But, on the day, this Quad U yesterday traded 240,000 calls, 65,000 puts. So that's actually double the average for both the calls and the puts. So it is a call-heavy name to begin with. The return on these November 29 calls on the day was about 165%, and basically a total of 27,000 of them were net opened. So $2 on 27,000 contracts, about $5 million to the total position if it's one buyer, but very one-sided, and it certainly worked out yesterday. Definitely giving back a little bit of it today, but not that much.
Yeah, this has been a hot one that we've watched many times. Again, on this show and a lot on options oddities. I'm just trying to see if I could pull up some of the most recent flow. We have a review from our August 29th show. Someone was buying the 12 calls for 50 cents when the stock was $9.87. So again, those looked kind of rich at the time. They were about a 100 vol. The stock ended up going out $11.50. So technically they didn't make it, but I'm sure they had some opportunities earlier on to maybe sell them for at the very least a scratch. It was a big move. Stock had to run, and Quad U has been on quite the rampage. You want to hear more Quad U fun, make sure you're checking out options oddities over there on the Pro, as we keep on rolling to a name that is one of our favorites here on the network and indeed on the Odd Block. Our old pal Stone Cold. Whenever we play this one, we need to play that glass breaking and some of that old Stone Cold entrance music. Yes, it's Stone Co. Limited, ticker symbol STNE, but known around these parts as Stone Cold. 1888, up about 70 cents or 3.8%. So, it's an interesting time in the season when Stone Cold is up on the docket, listeners. Again, let's see. On the year, Stone Cold's having a good year, so we make fun of it, but it's up 70% on the year, or 7 3/4. So it's been a good year to be long a little bit of Stone Cold. It was 11.16 a year ago. Sold off to its low for the year, not in April, but in January, of 7 3/4, and has pretty much gone straight up from there. Looks like I had a brief pause in July, got up to about 16.63, then sold off to about 12 3/4 on August 4th. And then since then has been kind of in rally ho mode for most of the time. Got back up to about $19 in September. It's kind of been hanging out in this high 18s, low 19s range pretty much ever since. So yeah, a good year for Stone Cold, for all of our mockery that we do of it. Mr. Flowmaster, what did you spot out here in everyone's favorite Stone Cold?
So this one is a pretty decent block this morning. I'm actually checking in with some floor brokers on the Amex just to triple check. So stock currently 1890, but about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, 11:30 New York time, 5,000 of the November 19 calls were crossed for $1.05. And cross just means the broker came in, had both sides of the order. The quote at the time was 95 cents at 110, so it's a little bit of a midpoint. It looks like a buyer to me, but I am trying to double check because floor trades, there's a little bit of wiggle room in timing, and you want to be double sure. But the stock is higher. Volatility hasn't really moved too much, so but this is for the company does like Brazilian fintech type of thing or something. But the average daily call volume in here is only 2,200 contracts. So to see one trade of 5,000, they're November calls, so they got about 6 weeks or so for the trade to work. It's not a super duper short dated tomorrow trade. They got a month for these. And I do have it confirmed it was a customer buyer, although it was a customer buyer tied to a stock at 1881. Meaning that takes the delta risk out of the trade, gets the buyer usually a little better price. But it is a relatively outsized, out of the money call purchase that I think is definitely worth watching. And stock's up a little bit from there, but this one I'll definitely keep on my radar.
And that's the bottom line because the Flowmaster said so. Our chat is quoting Stone Cold here, so we've definitely gone down a rabbit hole with this one. Let's do one more, Mr. Flowmaster, because I know it came across your radar. It's our old pal Lennar Corp Class A. Don't talk about them too often. The home builder is not always the sexiest of sectors, but once in a while they come on our radar. 128 and a quarter, up about $1.15 or about 1% right now. On the year, it's been kind of a topsy-turvy year for home builders. You don't need me to tell you that. A year ago, they were 160, so they're off about 31.5%. But that said, they were lower in April when all the madness was popping off. They got below $100, 98.42. Then they had a nice little run recently up to 142.40. That was in September, and it kind of looks like giving some of that back right now, even though they did sell off to 118 just about a couple of weeks ago and rally another 10 handles from there. So in the last few months, this has kind of been a more interesting name for trading out here. Mr. Flowmaster, what caught your eye out here in the Lennar Corp Class A?
So this one, we've talked about this situation before, and this is not an option situation currently. It's a tender that Lennar is offering, meaning they want people to basically turn in shares as part of a way to divest of the subsidiary, and to do that they give a discount. So meaning you basically get kind of a 6.5% bonus on the Lennar shares you tender. However, there's a proration, meaning if the institutional traders turn in millions and millions of shares, they actually get most of those back, and just some small amount gets converted into the subsidiary, which is MRP. But I've talked about this before, and I suggest people do some research on odd lot tender situations, which is something in the rules that basically says, well, in their tender terms, that says if you have under 100 shares, and you tender them, we'll actually exchange all of them. So you kind of jump to the front of the queue in terms of this discount. So we'll talk about this one again next week, because what we will begin to see as the tender deadline approaches, which is currently shows November 3rd or November 7th, you'll start to see some big option trades, basically revcons, where a customer is buying stock and selling a forward, and they do that so they can then tender all that stock and to try to basically capture that discount. We're not seeing it yet, but it's worth putting on the radar because it'll be a trade to do next week. But there's a funny wrinkle to this one, which is because the government's shut down, the SEC is not actually processing filings, and this tender can't take place until the SEC is processing filings. So it actually says in the deal terms or in the tender terms that if the government is not open, the deadline may be changed, extended, or possibly the divestiture could just be canceled for the moment. So meaning that actually adds some interesting risk to the trade itself. But we'll check in on this one next week. The stock has gone from kind of 121 up to about 128 in the last couple of weeks. it's something that somebody's may have traded these before. There's some information out on the web, some pretty decent web pages where people outline exactly how the trade works and what the risks are. Everybody has to do their own due diligence, but we'll be watching this one next time. And if it looks like the government might be reopening, or even if not, I'll probably do this trade just because effectively a $12,000 investment or so, it should be good for about $600 or $700 in discount. It just you just have to hold on to things for a couple weeks.
These are always exciting times when the Flowmaster has another interesting distribution or these tender offers. It's wild times out there. We just talked about warrants on GameStop on Options Bootcamp yesterday with our buddy Dr. Vix. Warrants, let alone on GameStop. Who'd have thunk it? So there's some interesting stuff afoot out there, listeners, if you're paying attention. As we keep on rolling, it is time for a little bit of the old mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, let's check in with what you folks have on the brain right now. Our audience is still split 50-50 on those D16 puts for 45 cents. You cannot make up your mind whether you want to buy them or you want to sell them. So I guess that's the hallmark of a market at the end of the day, but we'll keep an eye on that. Last week, you folks very much wanted to buy the OCC 18 puts for 17 cents. They traded 94,000 times last week. 71% of you wanted to buy those. I hate to break it to you. Those did not end up working out. I think VRO went out somewhere around 1870. Yeah, so no joy for the 18 puts. But hey, it was a good college try. You got a few days worth of rolling the bones on those bad boys. We've also talked about puts in the past. Nove 18 half puts for $1.19, 60,000 of those trading about a week ago, and 57.1% of you wanted to sell them then. So our audience kind of changing its tune, but then again, the vol regime has changed as well. So I could certainly understand that. But let's get out to our actual question of the week. We don't like to get political here, listeners. And we're trying to remove the politics from this. Just think of this from a purely economics perspective, as much as that's possible. But the debate out there right now is about the Fed and its independence, or perhaps lack thereof. The administration saying they want a few more seats at the table. They want a little bit more say in how the Fed does things. And the Fed saying, we want to remain independent. So we put it out there to you. Quite simply, do you think the White House should have more say in Fed decisions, or should it remain as quote-unquote independent? We all know the Fed is not independent at the end of the day. Just look at their decisions around the time of appointing new Fed governors. See how many times they've raised the rates around that time. Short answer, never. So not as independent as they would like to seem, but as independent as possible. Let's go out to the uncle list of Mike's right now, who was doing yeoman's work during the show. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think, in general, the administration should have a little bit more say in what the Fed does, or should the Fed remain as independent as possible, sir?
I think it should remain as independent as possible. I mean, there's certain things where America's the greatest country in the world. No question about that. I will never deny that. America is amazing. However, there are some things that I'd like to see us kind of rebuild. And the banking system is definitely one of those things in general, for a lot of reasons far beyond this show. But I think that, and that'll never happen because the bankers have control of everything and they don't want to be rebuilt. So with that being said, I'd like to see it stay as independent as possible. We have checks and balances. We did not have the Federal Reserve when our nation started. It didn't come around until I believe it was 1913, if I'm not mistaken. And sometime around then, I don't know the exact year, but I think that was it. But anyway, we need checks and balances. It's what our country was built upon. And even though the Fed is nowhere in the Constitution or anything like that, I like the check and balance system that we kind of pseudo have with the Fed. Kind of, sort of.
You think our audience is going that way as well?
I think they are.
Mr. Flowmaster, same question for you, sir. Which way are you leaning, and which way do you think our audience is leaning?
Well, I think Fed independence, or as much Fed independence as possible, is crucial because, the administration, whoever is in charge, they always want to have a booming economy, and the Fed is that check to be like, hang on a second, we don't want things to be so out of hand that we get a boatload of inflation. These are weird times in that there doesn't seem to be any real independence in any area of government at the moment. But I think our listeners will agree. Like, whatever your political views are, it's nice to have kind of some reasonable checks. And historically, the Fed has been conservative. They've done a pretty good job, except for maybe a few moments where they did let things get out of hand. But I kind of think it's important, and I think our listeners will agree that you have some independent body that looks at conditions, looks at data, and says, "No, we're not going to supercharge everything all the time."
Yeah, even if you're out there and you want the White House to have more of a say, listeners, just think about every politician out there. At the end of the day, is a populist in some way, shape, or form, and so they're going to want to cut rates all the time. As we've said, we've had Scott Nations on our Pro Q&A not too long ago, and he's written the book on financial crashes, and he was saying we've done far more damage keeping rates far too low for too long than the other way around. And that's probably a scenario we'd have a lot more if we had the White House controlling rates. Heading into an election, guess what would happen every time, listeners? So, yeah, it's interesting. And right now our audience agrees, 87.5% saying, regardless of which side of the aisle they're on, they want to keep the Fed independent. Only 12.5% saying the White House should have more input. That will go till the end of the week. At Options is the place to go to find out more as we keep going into Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, as we come into the end of the show here, we have the rally intensifying a little bit. Dow up about 1/3%, S&P up 2/3%, NASDAQ up 1%, and VIX cash hanging out right around 1735, so giving up nearly half a point out there in good old VIX cash. Well, let's go out to Uncle Mike, sir. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are you keeping an eye on till our next show?
Well, want to see whatever government numbers that are coming out with the shutdown and their skeleton crew. Keeping an eye on that. Earnings season is still upon us, so keeping an eye on any earnings announcements that may or may not happen, and possibly another all-time high in the market. Maybe I'll get to say it again on Monday. We'll see.
Mr. Flowmaster, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until your next appearance next week?
Well, we do have some more earnings, especially next week. Will be kind of cool. We have Apple next week and Amazon, and I think even Palantir at the end of next week. No, that's the following Monday. So some earnings, and the macro picture. I mean, I think right now you have to kind of have your eye on two different things because the macro picture is still significant, right? I mean, there's still global conflict. There's still a government shutdown. There's still this whole China tariff thing, which, everybody calmed down because, comments came out that, okay, we're going to deal with it. It's probably not going to be 100%, but at the same time, there's no actual news of what it might be. And I'll tell you, this government shutdown stuff, it's really, there is just from a personal angle or a Cboe angle, it's kind of delaying some things. We can't launch all of our products without the regulators being open. And, there doesn't seem to be anybody hustling to solve that situation. So, I don't know either. Maybe things will resolve and everything will stay wonderful. Or maybe things will get a little bit ugly, and I think that's why you have to be on the ball. You can't just kind of assume we're just going to kind of chop around, because we may chop around and then we may get a kind of a significant move there, just when everybody's not paying attention.
So far, the shutdown doesn't seem to be weighing on the markets, but we shall see out there. Shutdown. What shutdown? Unfortunately, that music means we are done for the old OB for this week. But you know what? If you need more in your lives, just hang out. I'll be back in a little bit on TWIFO. I will be joined by the new head of crypto derivatives over there at CME, talking all things crypto. They got some Solana and XRP lighting up their tape these days, not just Bitcoin and ETH. So spreading the kimono a little bit farther open over there at CME on the crypto front. Should be a fascinating chat. Stay tuned for that. If you're hanging out in the pro, just hang out. I'll be back in a little bit here. But before we go, around the horn we go. Mr. Flowmaster, sir. If folks want to check out all of your Flowmaster goodies, where should they go? What should they do?
So you could always go to Cboe.com/RMA and the Trade Alert page, which you can get to through /RMA or through TradeAlert.com. The login button has been moved, so it's easier to figure out how to log in to Trade Alert. And Cboe.com, we've got all sorts of great content there, and you can see the products that are in the pipeline and all sorts of good stuff.
There you go, Cboe.com/RMA. If you go to TradeAlert.com, make sure you scroll below the fold. You'll see that login link for individuals and institutions. And click on that, and then you could log in easily over there. Find all those goodies. Cboe.com, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires as we keep on rolling out to St. Charles land. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, if folks want to chat with you about these markets, or maybe they need some help moving a TV, where should they go? What should they do?
stcharleswealth.com. Be more than happy to discuss markets or move your TV if you need help with that. And check out my YouTube channel, too. Content is coming soon. It's not there yet, but it will be coming soon. Type in St. Charles Wealth Management in YouTube.
St. Charles Wealth Management, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Back again in a little bit for TWIFO. Going to talk about some crypto and a whole bunch of other fun there. Back again after the closing bell with the Hot Options Report. Again, if you like the option block, you're going to love the Hot Options Report, the latest addition to the network. Then back again tomorrow to talk some vol with our good buddy Dr. VIX and associated others. Who's going to join us? Well, you got to tune in to find out. And then, of course, we wrap up the week for our pro members talking oddities. I see some talk in our chat about risk reversals in Quad U. Yeah, Quad U has been an interesting favorite over there on oddities. Probably going to come back to that one tomorrow. A whole bunch of other fun flow to get to. Check it out for yourselves. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go for that. And we're back again next Monday. Can the Rock Lobster keep his trivia dominance alive? We'll find out on the next episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. When it comes to trading volatility, trust Cboe, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. Cboe's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.